Today, we bring you the full story of the fast escalating conflict between Israel and Iran, a crisis that has not only taken lives but now threatens to plunge the entire Middle East into war. Over the past 72 hours, missile exchanges, aerial bombings, and drone attacks between Israel and Iran have reached alarming levels. The violence has resulted in hundreds of casualties, major infrastructure damage, and growing fears that more nations could soon be dragged into the fight. But how did it all begin? To understand this conflict, we must go back, not just weeks, but years. For decades, Iran and Israel have been locked in a shadow war, a long, cold conflict waged through proxy forces, cyber attacks, assassinations, and airstrikes. Iran has supported groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all sworn enemies of Israel. Israel, in turn, has conducted hundreds of covert strikes on Iranian arms shipments, drone factories, and nuclear facilities across the region. But for all the hostility, the two nations have avoided direct war. Until now. The current wave of open hostilities began on April 1st, 2025, when Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria. The attack killed 7 Iranian officers, including a senior commander in Iran's elite Quds force, a man responsible for overseeing Iran's operations across the Middle East. Iran called it an act of war and promised revenge. For 2 weeks, tension built. Then, on the night of April 13th, the world witnessed what many feared. Iran launched more than 300 missiles and explosive drones directly at Israeli territory. This was historic. Iran had never before launched an attack from its own soil directly at Israel. Thanks to the advanced Iron Dome and David Sling missile defense systems, as well as assistance from US, British, and Jordanian military units, the majority of those weapons were intercepted. But some missiles got through. Cities like Tel Aviv, Beersheba, and Jerusalem were rocked by explosions. Civilian homes were hit. Several people were injured. Power stations and radar sites were briefly disabled. Israel responded within hours. Fighter jets took off from bases across the country, striking Iranian military targets hundreds of miles away, deep inside Iran itself. Over the following weeks, tit-for-tat attacks escalated. Israel bombed missile depots, drone production plants, and military research centers near Esfahan, Shiraz, and Tabriz. Iran responded through its network of proxies. Hezbollah fired rockets from Lebanon, and militias in Iraq launched attacks on US and Israeli bases in Syria. Israel struck back hard, targeting militant leaders and arms convoys from Iraq to Lebanon. As the death toll rose and the strikes grew more intense, the international community pleaded for calm. There was hope in late May, when US and European negotiators restarted indirect talks with Iran over its nuclear program. But that hope didn't last. Just days ago, Iran increased its uranium enrichment to 90% weapons-grade level. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, warned that Iran was now just weeks away from having enough material for a nuclear bomb. The West called it a red line. Iran said it was a response to Israel's aggression. The nuclear talks collapsed. That brings us to the latest and most dangerous escalation so far. On June 15th, Israeli missiles struck 2 major energy facilities in southern Iran, causing massive fires in Bandar Abbas and Bushehr. These sites were linked to Iran's military infrastructure and oil export systems. Iran retaliated with its largest wave of missile and drone attacks yet. According to Israeli sources, Iran launched over 200 ballistic missiles and more than 150 explosive drones. These hit targets across central and northern Israel. A major oil refinery near Haifa was engulfed in flames. A prominent scientific research institute in Rehovot, believed to be working on advanced defense technology, was struck directly. Civilian areas in Ashkelon, Petah Tikva, and Rishon LeZion suffered structural damage. In total, at least 14 people died in Israel, including 5 civilians. Dozens more were injured. Sirens rang out across the country as families took shelter underground. In Iran, the government reports 224 people killed, including oil workers, soldiers, and civilians in Shiraz and Esfahan. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Cities are on edge. Both nations are now in full military posture. The risk of a wider war is now very real. Hezbollah in Lebanon has already entered the fight, firing rockets into northern Israel. Israel has responded by striking targets in Beirut and the Bekaa Valley. Militias in Iraq and Syria are preparing for battle with Iranian backing. The United States has moved 2 aircraft carrier strike groups into the Persian Gulf. President Kamala Harris has warned Iran not to attack American forces. Turkey, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia have closed parts of their airspace. Oil prices have surged by over 20%, and humanitarian groups warn of a looming refugee crisis if this war continues. The United Nations Security Council met urgently last night, but with Russia and China refusing to condemn Iran and the U.S. standing firmly behind Israel, the international community remains divided and mostly powerless.
What comes next? The world is now watching and waiting. There is fear that the next round of strikes could target nuclear reactors. Israel's Dimona reactor, or Iran's Natanz and Fordow nuclear sites. A strike on either could turn this into a nuclear emergency, or even a World War-level event. For now, leaders are calling for calm. But with every missile fired and every life lost, the chances of diplomacy grow slimmer, and the chances of all-out war grow larger. End of calm. This is no longer just a conflict between 2 countries. It is a clash of power, ideology, and survival. And unless it ends soon, it could pull the entire Middle East and maybe even the world into a devastating war. We will continue to monitor the situation and bring you updates as they unfold. Remember to subscribe for latex news, facts, and history.